Good afternoon, everyone. So it's Tuesday at 2 o'clock, so that means it's time for CMM Live.
Exciting.
And with that huge audience out there waiting with bated breath for today's episode, I'm sure we're very excited. So folks, my name is Joe Campolo, and I proudly serve as a managing partner of Campolo, Middleton, and McCormick, a law firm here on Long Island. And our goal with CMM Live is to really highlight and spotlight in depth critical issues that are facing Long Island businesses and bring to you access and a forum to the leaders here on Long Island that are working with the business community to help solve those problems. Now, if you remember last week, we talked about wealth transition, investing for the future, making sure you maximize your retirement nest egg. There's no such thing as pensions anymore. So we have to do that, and we had a great segment there. Today we're going to switch a little bit differently. So that was for individual finance. Today we're going to deal with business finance. And I could think of no better person to talk about business finance here on Long Island than my good friend Kevin O'Connor. Just let me give you a little stats on Kevin. Kevin serves as the president and CEO of Bridgehampton National Bank. Became the CEO in 2008, right? You've led the company now through a cycle of 500% growth. 500%, which is...
If that's the number, that's
it's
good.
amazing. I find that to be amazing. Assets under your leadership have increased from $600 million to $3.4 billion. Fantastic.
Actually, 4.2.
And growing. And growing, even better. And according to my data, 2007, you guys had 14 branches, mostly on the East End. Now, with the completion of the Community National Bank acquisition, right, you have 29 Suffolk branches, 9 Nassau branches, 1 in Queens, 1 in Manhattan, for about 40 branches from Montauk to Manhattan. Is that about right?
That's pretty close.
So that's a pretty incredible...
It's been a great run.
Right,
I'm a lucky guy. I had an opportunity to join here 10 years ago. Actually, it was this week, 10 years ago.
Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you. As Long Island has grown and there's been opportunities, we've taken them. So to update the numbers, it's $4.2 billion and 43 branches, 2 in Queens. And very excited and see greater opportunities ahead.
Right. So part of the point today is going to be to try and help business folks watching get a better understanding of how to partner effectively with the bank and what that's all about. Part of it's going to want to hear the story of you and the bank's rise during this time. But I want to just have a conversation. So we're just going to talk about things. The first question I have is, so you say $4.2 billion in assets.
Right.
Right? What does that mean?
That's a combination of a lot of loans. It's basically, when banks measure themselves in assets and deposits, so deposits being what people put in the bank, they come in every week, or they come through machines and they deposit, and then assets is how we deploy them. We make investments in loans. Today we had a loan approval committee where we approved loans to finance 120 rental units on Long Island. Badly needed.
Very badly needed, absolutely.
We dealt with a company that sells office furniture, and we're going to finance them. So assets are really a measure of our investment back in the community. So I think that you and I talked I could do the George Bailey thing. Everybody's little deposit gets aggregated, and then we invest it in loans that help really finance Long Island's growth. I mean, one of the things I'd point out to you too, as we talk about numbers, what I'm most proud of as being a Long Island person is that we've taken our company from 100 employees to 500 employees. So we've provided jobs for many people in Long Island, and so that's really the exciting part of what we do.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I know Kevin well. We've served on some boards together, and I know that you feel the way most great business leaders are, and that is you try to do the best thing for 500 families, right, as well as your investors, as well as your customers. But the weight of 500 families rests squarely on your shoulders to make sure the right decisions are made, every day. And some days I wake up, and I don't know if you feel this way, but some days I wake up and go, what the hell did I get myself into at this point?
How did I get here? What am I doing here? Yes.
Exactly. So now it segues right into how did you get here, right? So how does one decide one day, I think I want to be the CEO of a bank? Where does that start, and how does that journey look like?
I wish I told you there was a plan. There really wasn't. I am Long Island born and bred, a product of Suffolk Community College, Adelphi University. Got the great pleasure to work at North Fork Bank for 20 years. And when that run ended, my predecessor, he and I met, struck up a conversation. He was looking to retire. And I hadn't realized, like many of us, the things that you learn over the 20 years in your life, or at that point in time, 40 years in my life, and recognize that he threw a challenge down to me. I'll share with you the first day that I was, the first day I started on the job, knowing that this was going to be my role going forward. They scheduled a cocktail party to welcome me, and so all the officers, and I see Claudia out there, all the officers were there, and the evening, and I was supposed to get up and say a few words. I had no idea what the hell I was going to say, but you realize that as you looked out and saw that they were looking to you for some direction, and you saw the passion that they had, and I fed off of that. And so this journey is in some ways an accident, but it's been an exciting one, and I know that I'm a very lucky person to have this role, to be able to work with people like you and to work with our customers to really help Long Island get better.
Yeah, I think it was Winston Churchill who said he didn't ask for the job, but everything he had done up to that point before becoming prime minister somehow prepared him, for that job. So roll it back. You graduate from Adelphi, right? And what made you get into banking? Was it numbers? Was it development? What was it?
I think it was interesting. I think that even going through college, I worked at a drugstore, and sort of business interested me. My degree is in accounting. I spent 3 years working for a large accounting firm, and I think the one takeaway I had from that maybe is that as working in an accounting firm, and sometimes you wind up just working on projects and never seeing anything from beginning to end. And I had the opportunity to join Norfolk, and you could see that you were building something. And so, the journey at Norfolk was 20 years, 15 acquisitions, growing from 600 million to 60 billion, and we created something. Took opportunities, and so you kind of get that sense that you want to see something from beginning to end. You have a vision, and you want to build that you can actually realize that vision.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really important thing for the business community and our audience today to understand, and that is, it took me a long time to figure this out, right? But bankers, really good bankers, can envision a project to completion. Like you mentioned, the 120 unit affordable housing, right? Badly needed, or rental, whatever. Rental housing. Both badly needed here on Long Island, right? So people think, well, bankers are just bean counters, just number crunchers. They're going to put it in a formula, and it's either going to pass or not pass. My experience, and this has been my experience with you, and this has been my experience with your team, is you actually look at the whole project and say, does it make sense? Is this something that we feel can succeed, irrespective of the numbers at this point? Does it make sense? And I think it's important for understand.
I think the passion you and I bring to our jobs every day. The customers we deal with, they bring that same passion, and so we feel, and this is, some people get concerned about this, as bankers, we're partners with you in this process. We want to understand really where you're trying to go, what you're trying to accomplish, and really work with you to, at the end of the day, we really want to lend you the money. And some people say banks don't want to lend. We want to put that money out with you. We want to see you accomplish what you want to. So we like to basically understand from beginning to end how you're going to get there. Identify some things that you may not be thinking about. One of the things that we both deal with entrepreneurs is entrepreneurs, by their nature, are very strong-willed. They're often never wrong. And a lot of times they don't have sources to provide advice or guidance. And so we like, as bankers, to make sure that they're working with good attorneys, good accountants, and like to put together the team that helps them get there. So the conversation about some of the loans, and one loan in particular that I know we talked about today, I've probably been dealing with that individual for the last 2 years, getting him into the position where, this is the things that he needed to do to get to this stage. And, there's a great feeling that at the end of the day, he's going to be able to realize that dream, and, people have some place to live. And he's taken a piece of underused real estate and created a spot where, maybe one of my 500 employees can go live.
Right. You said something interesting, and I get a lot of feedback about banks. As I'm sure you get a lot of feedback about lawyers, right? It's just the way the nature.
We won't tell any jokes about that.
No, we won't. Okay. We won't have any jokes. But I agree. Banks are in the business to make loans, right? But these entrepreneurs, who can't get funded from traditional finance, a lot of times it's because their ideas stink, because they're just not good ideas, and it's a very difficult thing to have to tell somebody, that. And so what I find a lot of bankers do is they'll blame it on regulatory schemes, they'll blame it on formulas, and the community will say to me, but I don't understand. If I was already bankable, then I wouldn't need a loan, but I need the loan to grow this idea to become bankable, and it's a very, a conversation that I am involved in a lot with that. And so how do you see that? How do you respond to that? Because I get the partnership.
I think it's an honest conversation. I think it's, as you said, there are bad ideas that shouldn't be lent on. There are good ideas that are underfunded. There are good ideas that are not totally thought out. I mean, there are great products. How do you get them distributed in people's hands? There are great businesses or great ideas where there's absolutely no money to go into it at this point in time, and an investor and a lender there is really an investor in it, and that's not really our role. Again, we are a regulated industry, and I use that term. I get concerned when I start to say that, but at a certain point in time, there are parts in the funding structure that really are investors and not lenders. And I think that, what bankers need to do early on in the conversation is understand that, have that conversation with the entrepreneur, and figure out the direction they should take.
So managing growth, right? A big challenge of mine. We're not close to 500 employees, right. But managing attorneys is a very difficult, daunting task. So I feel like it's 500 at times.
Bankers are so much easier.
No, I get that, but you and your core team have such a clear vision, mission, reputation. You personally are a handshake guy. If you give somebody your handshake, it's as good as your word. And now you got 500 others out there, that you're trying to instill, train, and make sure that is coming through in every communication. So how do you, make sure that your vision is permeated throughout the entire organization?
I mean, I think it started, I'll say this with Bridgehampton National. It started with the fact the culture that was here was incredibly strong. For many people, we may be relatively new further up Long Island, but we were out for 100 years on the east end of Long Island. And the 100 bankers that were there, most of them still with us today, truly understood what community banking was and the culture. They were the bank in town. And so we have really spent the last 10 years, we've added a good number of people, 400 plus people, but it's all about the people that fit in that culture, that have that same mission to basically deliver community banking. I'll say this to go back to the conversation. I'm not sure I truly understood what community banking was until I got in the seat and watched how our people on the East End dealt with their customers. And it was very obvious to me that I knew a lot of people at other banks along the way that felt the same way. And so made it a mission really to now take those people that were frustrated where they were at other institutions and bring them on board. And take the culture that existed in Bridgehampton National Bank for 100 years and just grow it with people that felt the same way. And so we have done a very difficult job to make sure the people we bring on, while they bring us business and customers, feel the same way about how to delivering that service. And so it's a strong effort to make sure that we bring the right people on. And some people don't make it, they don't get it. And sometimes you make mistakes in the people you hire, but at the end of the day, we've been able to build a team that I appreciate your kind words and compliment, but that I think get what we're trying to do, which is basically to grow our business and to help our customers realize their dreams.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it's not lip service. I mean, it's our show. I can invite on whoever I want, that. Right? So I'm going to invite on people that I genuinely respect, and I've been doing this a long time. And the banking community, you guys turn over like fruit flies sometimes. I mean, it's very quick.
It's the alphabet soup of banks, right?
It really is, and it's amazing. And I think that causes a lot of confusion there in the marketplace. But when I see, so I'll just use it by analogy with me, okay? Because roughly about the same time, we've been both sitting in the seats we're in
Right.
for about the same time. We've had great growth in our industries. We really have. And I look at it and I say, okay, what's led to our growth? And I'd love to say, well, we're just the greatest thing since sliced bread, but there's no shortage of lawyers. There's no shortage of law firms. There's much bigger players here on Long Island. I had to have half a screw loose to get into this in the first place. Okay, but I look at it and I say, you know what? Some skill, some luck. 07, 08 hit. Legal fees were a big problem for a lot of companies. We were a startup firm. We could be very flexible in terms of pricing, in terms of service we could deliver. And people appreciate that, right? When there's hard times, people appreciate that and they stick with you long term. And then you got to deliver service. So from your perspective, there's no shortage of banks.
Nope.
There's no shortage of banks. But you guys have really stood out in people's minds and experiences. So in the 10 years that you're here, it's skill and luck. But what is it over the last 10 years? Like, what is it that has really driven your growth? Canned answers are it's the people, it's the service, but what is it really?
Listen, there has been tremendous opportunity. As you said, there's been tremendous turnover in banks where a lot of the institutions that used to do things like us are gone. They're now owned by out-of-state banks. Decisions are not being made here. There are a lot of institutions, as they got bigger, they decided to chase the larger customers, and they left a void. Yeah. And so we were very clear that, when I go see somebody, even if they don't want to bank with me, I ask who their bankers are. And I meet with lawyers and accountants, and I say, who are good bankers that you work with? And so it's going out and talking to them. It's being out every night and lots of lunches and getting your name out there, but it's also delivering. It is having people on the ground that want to get it done. I want to make loans. I want to be in partnership with our customers. I see tremendous opportunity. I started off saying I went to Suffolk and Adelphi. This is where I grew up. This is where I want to have my career. I challenge all of the people who work for us that the better job we do, the more jobs we create on Long Island, the more our people can stay here. I often say the more your grandchildren can stay here. This is a passion that I think is felt throughout the organization. And so, it is luck, it's opportunity, it's hard work. In some cases, I'm going to say this, it's just common sense. We have, and I'm sure you have the same issue. We work very hard to get clients in the door, I get customers in the door, and sometimes you have to hand them off to get the actual deal done. Yep. And then the follow-up is on you and I to make sure that actually happens. And sometimes it doesn't, and I'm sure you have the same frustration. I work so hard and let's get this thing closed. And so it starts at the top. I mean, it starts and just having the passion to follow through.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because it's a challenge, right? So you start out, and I always say, I was just a poor country lawyer in my little office in Smithtown, me and a secretary, and then one day you say, how the hell did I get to where I am? And part of it is, you're right, there was a perfect void for someone with yours and your management team's skill set to step into on a community banking level and gobble up all that business, right? And then the question becomes, what's next? Grow or die, what's next? You can't, all of a sudden pretend you're Godzilla and then go back to just being a poor country lawyer sitting in Smithtown. It doesn't happen. So how are you handling that challenge? How are you, leading through that? Because there's got to be a lot of questions about that.
At the end of the day, this is still a huge economy. It's, I don't know, the numbers, it's in the top 10 of states, the United States, if you just took Long Island. And we're still a relatively small player. There are still places that don't know about BNB. And so I think there's a lot of runway left for us to take on. We are continually looking for bankers, both on the branch side and the lending side. There are a lot of people that work for institutions that are unhappy. And I'd like them to think they could be happy with us. So, we continue to try and get people that face customers that can bring business in the door. At the same time, a big part of our success has been the organization we've created around those customer-facing people. You know, so much of banking is identified as the lenders and the branch managers, but I'm sure in your so many people that sit behind the scenes that basically make sure your payments get processed, that when you come make the deposit, it winds up in your account. You know, the regulatory process from the compliance side, all of that stuff has to be done. You know, the growth that we've had is only, you know, as a regulated industry, is only allowed because basically they're happy that we do all that stuff well. So, you know, finding all of those people that work in compliance, work in loan operations, work in the IT world, are just as important for me in finding the people in the front of the house. And so building an organization of that kind of, with that kind of strength on both sides allows me to feel comfortable that as I bring it in the door, it gets serviced and we don't fail to deliver on the promise we make, right? Because it's challenging to change your banking relationship. If anybody's ever done that, I mean, it's not just a signature card, it's many, you know, we like to kill lots of trees to make you open an account with us. And there's lots of effort. And so I try to take, when we talk about loans and growth in loans and deposits, if you boil that down to individual customers, people had to make decisions to come to us. They're doing that in many cases. They're leaving one bank to come to us. And so we're making a promise we can deliver on the things we say. And I have to make sure that the people behind the scenes can deliver. And I'm comfortable that we can.
So value, right? This is about value. So, you know, I hear this all the time about a lot of different things. You know, oh, lawyers are all the same. What's your rate? That's a deciding factor for people.
We get asked that same question.
Exactly.
What's the rate on a loan?
And banks and people will say, what do I care? They're all regulated the same way. Who's got the best rate? And that's who I want to go with. Now, I don't know about you, but a client walks in and says, I want the cheapest lawyer I can find. That's probably not a good fit for somebody, for me to work with long term, right? But for you guys, help, you know, everybody understand, you know, what is the unique value? Past, you know, we have great service and our retail managers greet everybody and we give them lollipops and cups of coffee because...
And dog biscuits.
And dog biscuits, we get all that. But really, what I want, you know, our viewers to understand is growth that you've had over these years, over these challenging years, is not by accident. It's because there's a value there. There's a risk that you're willing to take within parameters that other bankers might not be willing to take. There's a service that goes beyond, you know, a branch manager knowing somebody's name when they come in. So you have to be real proud of that value prop because that stems from you. So talk a little bit about that core.
It's about trying to understand the characters of the character of the people you do business with. I think that, you know, as you said, during the crisis, it was a challenge. You know, good people ran into bad situations. People were over leveraged. People that really even were not over leveraged, but just things happened to them. How they reacted to that is a good measure of their character. And you know, so as an institution, many banks say, okay, I'm not going to lend to restaurants, or I'm not going to lend to hospitality, or I'm done. I've got all my contractor exposure I want. We don't really have those kind of parameters. We do look at the loans we make to the individuals. We get to understand and meet them. You know, I probably know, you know, I'd say I probably met 60 to 70% of our customers personally, of the large scale customers. And certainly every loan that we've made, people have visited the facility, they get to know them. They get to know them, you know, with multiple touch points. And it is trying to understand, listen, business is a challenge. It's not a straight line. There's very few businesses that do this. Even you and I probably had some little bumps along the way. How you manage through those, how you're upfront about it, the dialogue that goes back and forth. I think that, you know, as you said, we're not going to be the lowest rate in town, but I'd like to think we have the best people and best bankers that you can talk to as you work through that process. Because a growing business, you know, it's got its challenges. It's, you know, especially the ones that are successful because they change course at different times.
Yep. So one of the things I'll tell you that I get a lot of feedback about banks, and with yours it's always very positive feedback, is the workout process. So we like to believe that everything's always going to work out. Everybody has good intentions, But hey, 2008, you become CEO, and the world is collapsing. I was at lunch. I don't remember what bank it was with. I think it was Citibank was talking, and they were saying in 2008 the stock hit $2, and they sat around waiting for the furniture to be removed from the office. Okay, so this vision of banks are these huge conglomerates that can never go under are different. So there's workout periods, and the consistent feedback that I get from your workout group and the clients that deal with it is that they're very respectful of the process, right? And I think that goes a long way, because people want to feel that they have dignity, that they're human beings, and if they're trying and they just can't make it, that there's a respectful process that goes in there. So I think folks want to understand that process a little bit.
Well, I think that for the longest time we didn't even have a workout group. Basically, if the lender made the loan, you're going to own it to beginning 10 because you stood by that person. And so we've supplemented that a little bit only because it just gets sometimes challenging. But at the end of the day, the lenders that were engaged when the loan was made are still engaged all the way through. They understood the business. They made the loan based upon the character. And as you said, there is a dignity part of it, and people want to do the right thing most of the time.
Right.
And provide that opportunity.
We're not talking about the 10% that's just...
and so, if we've done what we should do right in underwriting, and we've identified multiple sources of repayment or liquidity, right, let's work with them and figure out how we can get there. And what caused your situation to get this way? What's your plan to get out? Many entrepreneurs have 9 lives. And so if I have to ride 3 or 4 of them in that process to get there, I'm willing to do that. And at the end of the day, I don't want to own your house. I don't want to take your inventory. I don't want to take your place of business. I want to provide you a way that you can pay me back the cash that you owe me. And so the draconian approach, maybe it works in a large institution because the person who made your loan, once he makes your loan, he wants to move on to the next deal. My guys live and breed with you. They look to grow their book of business by you growing your business. So I appreciate that sentiment is out there, and it's important for us because, again, we are part of the community.
It's a great point, though, that people need to understand, right? Is my experience is bankers just want a path forward, okay? And I had a situation, this was back probably 07, 08, 09, around there. I had a guy, he had a $50 million line of credit, and he leased automobiles. And the whole world fell apart. And he had PGs, and he had all this problem. And the bank he was dealing with wasn't your bank, it was a different bank, very, very difficult bank to deal with, right? But this guy was just a salesman extraordinaire, and he kept telling them, I will find a way through, stick with me. They sold the loan. They didn't believe in him. However, the group that bought the loan made a ton of money off this guy, right? Because he was able to sell his way through. So I really like that your lending guys are sort of sticking with it, because I think that helps.
People understand. So today we make loans at 4, 5, and 6%. It's a nice return, but it's 4, 5, and 6%. The day that you sell that asset to somebody that's going to buy a troubled loan, he's looking to make 20 to 25% of that money. So I always understood. So we struggle to make 5 and 6% loans, and we're selling somebody that's going to create an asset makes 20 and 25%. That's not the business I want to be in. And so, we've been successful holding on to most of our troubled loans and working through them. And I think we get a much more loyal customer. And I think that, we've demonstrated, sort of the strength of our conviction.
Yeah, and I think that's right. You stick with someone when the times are tough, you're going to have a customer for life. Let's shift a little bit to the economy, okay? We'll start nationally, work our way down to Long Island. So
you want to talk national politics?
We're going to talk national politics only because President Trump is now interviewing a new Fed chairman, potentially to replace Chairperson Yellen.
Yep.
Most people don't understand what the hell that means for Joe Q. Citizen, right? Don't understand. All I know is I got CDs that I'm still getting paid less than a point on a year.
Yep.
So I don't know what the hell is going on. But talk about the relationship between banks in general with the Fed, and why is that important? Why is this such a critical path for the recovery of the economy long term?
Well, the Fed is their goal is to obviously grow the economy, control employment and inflation. And so lowering rates was meant to spur on the economy. The Fed, as part of this process to help our recovery, actually got involved in the interest rates on two sides. They got involved with the short-term rate, the Fed funds rate, and without boring everybody, get involved is quantitative easing, which is basically buying long-term assets and mortgages and controlling both ends of the curve, believing that lower rates would spur the economy on. The economy certainly has recovered, and now it's a question of how you unwind that to get to what we consider a more normal rate environment. That is a challenge that nobody's ever done. We are in an experiment.
Right.
What the Fed did, the Fed and central governments, central bankers did in this last cycle was an experiment to flood the system with cash and hope that the economy would recover. That part's happened. The economy has recovered. How you take that cash out without creating negatives in the economy, putting us into recession or doing something, is something nobody's figured out yet. And so we talk about the Fed sort of easing rates up a little bit on the short end, and Fed they've raised it a couple different times. They're going to reduce their quantitative easing, and we may see mortgage rates go up, but that's a big fear. If 30-year mortgage rates go up 100 basis points, 1%, what does that do to the housing sector? What does that do to the retail sector? And so there's a big concern as they unwind this experiment how it works. And that is, and the choice on the Fed chairman, I guess is important, but I think at the end of the day, whoever they get is going to be somebody that's going to have to deal with this challenge.
But how does it affect the banking industry? So I'm going to give you, and if this is terribly boring, we can edit it out.
Good.
I'm totally fine with that. But I want to make sure
I don't want to lose them all.
I don't want to lose all three of our followers right now. Okay, but I want to make sure I understand this. So the Fed basically at one point was at a zero interest rate that it would lend money to you guys for. Okay. And you could in turn take that money and lend it out and make a profit.
Right.
Okay. Fed raises the rates, though. You're going to have to lend money out at a higher rate, and you're going to have to pay higher rates on CDs and everything else, long-term deposits that are there. But what about short-term deposits? So the reason I ask is because every banker, and I'm nosy, and I'm like, how do you guys get comp? Because that's how I know I'm going to help you long-term. And every banker says deposits. Deposits. But business checking deposits is such a quick turnover, or can be such a quick turnover in terms of that. So how does it work? Is there a ratio of deposits that you're able to use for lending? How does that work? Is that proprietary to you guys? Is it regulated? How does that work? Because deposits is everything.
Deposits is everything.
Everything.
It is because banking is based upon a stable source of funds, right? And so deposits are the most stable, sticky, consistent form of funding that we can get. Now, banks can go out and borrow through Wall Street and things like that, but that's going to be more expensive and more volatile and not have that ability to make the kind of long-term loans that we'd like to make. So, we all want deposits. That is the holy grail. That's what we have our charter for. And then we go out and make those loans. So the idea is that as the Fed begins to raise rates and other rates in the marketplace go up, the rates through Wall Street and things like that, you hope that we'd like to be able to lag those deposit costs and not raise them. So when the Fed raises 25 basis points, I haven't raised the rate on your CD by 25 basis points.
Right. But that eats into your profit then, ultimately.
Well, over time it will.
Yeah, and so you gotta play it. So looking nationally, what markets are you guys bullish on right now? I mean, is it real estate? Is it infrastructure spending? Where do you see good loans being made?
I think as a bank we always look to real estate, right? We look for that hard collateral that we can get. We look for steady sources of income, right? Real estate is the investors in real estate sign leases and get that. Obviously the infrastructure, when and if it happens, that's the big question, will be it. We're looking at the general, there is tremendous activity going on here. So to pick different sectors is not sort of where we are.
Yeah, okay, I get that. But on Long Island, so I look at Long Island and I don't know, I always seem to be on the wrong side of the real estate bubbles, okay? I always seem to buy high and sell low is the way that I seem to, to go.
You and I both.
Right, we seem to be in this area where people are saying we're having sustained growth here on Long Island in terms of the real estate market, but I don't really see it. I don't really see it in the sale prices that are happening out there. What are you guys seeing in terms of, loan to value, equity in homes. What are you guys seeing in that?
I think on the residential side, we're seeing sort of steady growth, I would say, and in different pockets. The East End, the
Ridiculous, an anomaly. Right?
anomaly.
Yeah,
It's one of the few places in America that it occurs in. Through the middle of the island, I think we're seeing what should be sort of steady. I mean, people didn't buy their houses before as investments. They bought them as places to live, and they sort of keep up with inflation. I think on the there seems to be probably a little bit of a glut in office space that we're a little concerned about.
Yeah.
And then the big box retailers. I think that's the big. What is the challenge there? What are the big? When Amazon, you can buy it on Amazon. What happens there?
Yeah, and you're peeking at my notes because I have that
Okay.
sort of. I have that underlined because it's a huge issue, right?
It is.
Especially here on Long Island.
And I think what's been interesting, and I'll say this, it plays to sort of our strength. There has been a move afoot by consumers, both from where they want to live, where they want to shop. The stuff that you can buy on Amazon, you buy on Amazon. The things that you feel.
Do you use Amazon?
For a few things, yeah.
I use it for everything.
Okay.
It's like Christmas morning every day at my house. It's unbelievable.
What's going to get dropped there?
You know what it is? The recycle days are insane. It takes me a half hour to cart all the cardboard out to the curb.
But what you're seeing is sort of a rebirth, a little bit of Main Street. And so that, I think, is a positive sign in the economy.
So that's interesting. So small towns and village shop type of thing, resurging for specialty, big box. It's scary though. Listen, something else there's an opportunity. So I just had a very interesting conversation with some very high developers who are starting to study the impact that Uber is going to have on Long Island with regard to commercial parking spots, okay? Because they're saying if Uber really takes off and does a mass transit overlay for Long Island, which we're so desperate for, it now opens up all of this parking space, like at Ronkonkoma train station, right? If people are going to Uber to the train and Uber back to the train, now all this parking spot is open up for, for development. So the curiosity is, where does technology lead us for all of this real estate? I mean, if I'm you guys, and you guys know your job better than I do, but I'm watching retailers tank every day in the stock market, and I'm sure that a lot of them hold a lot of loans with, banks across the country. So how do you, you're the captain of the Titanic and you see an iceberg way out there. How do you start to delever and really make sure that you stay healthy in that perspective? What are the moves? Everybody thinks banks are so regulated that you're just a bunch of stuffy guys sitting around, writing in your ledger books, and there's no room for business sense. I know that's not true, but I want you to
sometimes
tell them.
it is, but
I want you to tell them how do you maneuver around that?
Listen, I think you and I read the same things, and we try to understand and see those trends and where they are. I think we talked about the big box thing. I think we've talked a little bit about sort of the Main Street. I had not heard the Uber in the parking one, but that's interesting.
Yeah, really interesting to me.
I guess with the Uber cars, we'll have to find some place to park at night, though.
Yeah, they're driveways, I guess. Yeah.
I guess. But it is watching and reading, and that is the one thing I think we can be a little bit nimble on. As a bank, we didn't really lend on any of those big, but our loans are really concentrated in many cases in those retail corridors or the sort of small businesses. We did not do a lot of office lending, if you will, because that's where the concerns are. But it is, again, trying to look and finding those nuggets that create opportunities.
It's an art. I'll tell you, it's an art. You got to pick more winners than losers at that point.
And that in some cases too, it's not all. It's about who you do business with too, right? It goes back to that same character. There could be 5 restaurants, and all of a sudden people are not going to eat out, but 2 of them will do well because they're good business operators, and 3 won't.
Yep. So let's turn a little bit to community involvement, philanthropy. Mm-hmm. Okay, one of the things that you guys are renowned for is your presence in the community. You're giving back to the community, which I think is incredibly important. We try to, use you guys as role models to be, to be able to do that. Is it just about business, or is this a real passion of yours? Is this something you feel really important about?
It's always been part of Bridgehampton. It's part of being the local bank in town. And I think we have just continued it and really taken it to the next level. We recognize that, we're one of the larger companies on Long Island today. growing up, there was the Grummans, there was there was much larger companies that contributed and provided that sort of backbone of philanthropy. It's now much smaller organizations, and so the burden falls on organizations like ours. We try to do it in a way that we not just give our dollars, but give our expertise. Many of our employees serve on boards of organizations. I can't tell you how many treasurers I probably have working for me of various not-for-profits. And it's a great chance for us to give back and demonstrate to the community that it's not just all about the profits that we make. And in many cases, the people who are involved in the organizations are also business people, because we feel the same way. I mean, listen, as we surround ourselves with people we like, right? I mean, you and I have had this conversation.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of people we're forced to have lunch with and dinner with, and there are people we want to.
Absolutely.
And so oftentimes as part of the process here, you meet people on the business side, they're involved in organizations, and you want to continue that relationship. Or you meet them in charitable organizations, and you recognize there's a business opportunity. But it's always been part of our organization. And listen, on a personal level, I feel blessed everything that's gone on in my life. If there's a way for me to give back, and I espouse that, and that comes out, I mean, I try to teach in my own children. This is all about sort of paying it forward, if you will, to take the trite term.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, so you guys always have a big VIP presence at the Hampton Classic. I was, thank you for the invite. I was out there. This year, and it was incredible. And it's become a part of the fabric, right? That BNB is there at the Hampton Classic, and your folks are looking forward to it. And everybody there was just so genuinely excited. So how do you keep that as you continue to grow up, right? Because that's the magic of it, is grow, and yet you got to keep that community presence so you stay true to your roots.
It's the Hampton Classic, when I started here 10 years ago, we were there for one day and had 50 people in the room. Over the course of the last week, probably entertained 600 people over the course of that week. It's in some ways that provides a great vehicle, because it allows us to put customers with non-customers, allows us to put customers together that oftentimes know each other outside their relationship with us. And it is just finding opportunities to basically leverage our brand and our people. And our people enjoy doing things like that. That was a fun week for me. I will tell you, when it was done that Monday afterwards, I was tired, but it was a great opportunity to see so many people, in some cases, share an event that many people had never seen before. The Hampton Classic is, it's the greatest horse show put on in America. Basically, it's an international type event. That this is the largest one put on in the United States, and our ability to basically take not only existing customers from the East End, but our new customers, and participate. And I'm sure when you were there, you ran into people that you didn't know you were going to see there, because that's the kind of event it is. And so, we advertise through the media, both print, through radio. We do some television, but at the end of the day, our most success is our people interacting and creating a special environment, a special event that people come to.
Right. So more growing pains, right? Because growth comes with a lot of pain. Your own time management, your own personal time management, right? So I'm sure you, just like every prominent business leader out there, has no shortage of invites to be honorees, to attend the lunch, to attend the dinner, to attend the breakfast. Give folks a sense of how you manage that process. How do you, so for example, you're being honored by UCP, the United Cerebral Palsy Association. I happen to sit on the board. That's one of the boards that I sit on with no business intentions whatsoever. It's just a very deep, visceral give back that I want to give for my time. And you have two of your senior guys on that board, and you're being honored, and I think that's terrific. How do you manage your time to make sure that at the end of every day, you feel you've been productive?
Well, if you ask a lot of people, I don't do it well, but I don't say no a lot to a lot of events from the standpoint of breakfast, lunch, and dinners, because that's where you get to meet people. We meet very interesting people. I try to spend a lot of time out seeing customers and touring this facility, that facility. I've been in many factory floors. And so it is a challenge, but it's a fun part of my job. I enjoy being out with customers.
It's back at the office when it gets aggravating.
Listen,
I feel the same
and
way.
they don't want me back at the office either, right? They're much happier when I'm out. And so, and the events that, that we sort of put our name behind this year with UCP, that, be honest, that's sort of a personal thing on two sides. One of our very important employees, his son goes there, and his wife gave a speech at last year's dinner.
Yep.
That I was hoping she would make that same speech for me this year because it was so compelling. And my sister suffers from that, so it's a personal connection. But I enjoy what I do every day. So when I say that I'm out, I'm enjoying the people I'm meeting, the places I go, and so I don't do a good job managing my time, but that's fine. I'm enjoying it.
Right. You seem to be productive. I mean, so many people I know get to a leadership position and then start complaining about the fact that they got to go out there and meet with clients and customers and do all these things. And it's like, that's the point. One of the things that I do, I'm going to give you a rare glimpse into this exciting, nefarious world that I live, is I love reading presidential biographies and particularly their diaries. So I'm reading Reagan's diary right now, right? Because I say to myself, I'm so busy, how do I get everything done? But when you start looking at what the President of the United States has to accomplish on any given day, every single day, you start realizing I can actually get a lot more accomplished than I'm really doing. But a challenge that I have is who to say yes to, who to say no to. You start picking too many yeses when you should have said no's, and you find yourself, in a hole. So recreation, what do you like to do? What do you like to do to blow off steam? You carry a big burden? What do you like to do?
Well, I'm not a golfer. If anybody that's played with me would know that. So, I have my family. I have a couple sons that live here, one out of state, and so I spend some time with them. We were talking earlier. I love to cook.
Yep.
So it's things like that. I putt around the house a little bit. Have a boat. On Long Island, you should have a boat.
You have to have a boat.
So.
All right, let's talk about talent, your team. So huge challenge, I'll just tell you, in my industry, huge challenge is, 40 miles west of here is New York City. Salaries and Wall Street is sitting there, and attracting, retaining, keeping really talented lawyers is a huge challenge and a big part of my job. Right. What are you guys experiencing in the banking world? How does that affect you? How have you been able to grow? I mean, with that challenge, because we need younger blood coming up, right?
It is, in our industry, many of the people who are the successful, senior bankers today went through formal credit training at the big banks. They don't really do that anymore. So there is a dearth of young bankers. And so, as much as you'd like to be able to, hire some people to fill roles, we've made a decision we need to grow some of them. And so we've made a real commitment. We actually brought somebody in, we're calling him a chief talent officer today.
Interesting.
Because so much of the human resource burden has been compliance and things like that, this gentleman we brought on, and his real role is to work with our younger people, our senior managers, our middle managers, and really, almost on a one-on-one basis, try and create a career path for them. Where do you fit? Where do you need to get to the next level? What do you need to do? For the people that have, okay, you've got 3 or 4 people working. Who is your superstar? How are you making sure that person knows who that is? And that was a real challenge for us, because that's a big position to fill. It's not a typical one institution our size, but we felt it was the right answer for us. And I think if you ask any of our employees, I think they're happy with it, because he's been a key component, and I find myself leaning on him personally at times.
Yeah, I mean, talent, I guess in both our industries, as in most industries, it's about people, it's about relationships. I mean, to the younger generation, so I'll use my daughter. She's a sophomore in college right now. She's lost. She doesn't know what she wants to do. So what I'm trying to do is, when she has breaks, I'm trying to let her work in different departments in the firm to see what she likes and what she wants to do and what really attracts her. So in terms of attracting younger talent, how are you guys reaching out? Are you offering internships? Are you going to job fairs? What are you guys doing to make yourselves?
All of the above.
Right.
We probably had 15 college students in summer as interns. A couple of them have stayed with us because they came from local schools. We've participated in job fairs, even internally. So one of the things in the bank industry, so I have 500 employees, 44 branches, people starting
4.2 billion in assets.
4.2 billion in assets.
I won't make that mistake again.
So many people start in our institution sort of as tellers. And, where do they want to, as you start as a teller, you may want to stay on the retail side of the bank and aspire to be a branch manager, move up that chain, or you want to move on to the lending side. So we've basically created a job shadowing program. So you decide that you'd like to understand what they're doing in accounting, you can go job shadow somebody there. So it's all sort of those different nuances that are there. Obviously as a bank we offer a lot of training, but I am most proud of some of the people that we've hired, that were out of college and where they are today and where they started. That's, it's very gratifying to hire a senior banker and watch him grow, but it's much more gratifying to see somebody that started as a teller that now is working, as a junior lender.
Yeah, I have the same experience. So 10 years ago, I hired a bunch of young law students to help me grow this thing. They're all still here. They're all in senior positions, and nothing better.
Right.
Nothing better than seeing that growth. Last topic that I want to talk about is local Long Island economy issues facing, Long Island, and your thoughts on it. We touched on housing. We touched on retail space. But a lot of the problems that we have in getting into just talent retention here are people buying homes here and
right.
and getting roots here. And I keep beating the drum that if we become an island where it's just police force, teachers, and hospitals, then what the hell are we all doing here?
Right.
At this point. And there's a lot of stuff going on. MS-13. How the hell did we get gangs here all of a sudden
right.
that are grabbing the headlines of everything that's going on? Now you're a tried and true Long Island guy. I'm a tried and true Long Island guy. What's the path here? What's the message that you would give to somebody saying, I want to make my roots in Long Island. I want to buy a home here. I want to start a business here. Help me.
That's a big question.
That's a big question. I'm going to end with a big one. That's
I
it.
understand that. Listen, I think that, we have to be open-minded to different forms of housing. The concept of these transit-oriented developments makes sense. The idea of what we did today in basically financing multifamily housing on Long Island. The value of Long Island real estate on a per square foot is very expensive and expensive to maintain with the cost of taxes. How do we basically allow that to happen? I think what you're seeing in the rebirth of the small towns, I lived for 2 years in Patchogue as we watch what goes on in Huntington, what they're trying to do in Wyandanch, all the different places on Long Island, Farmingdale. That's a place where you can create affordable housing for young people to stay. And you're creating an environment that they want to stay in too. I used to joke around at times, we send our kids away to college and then when they come home and basically they come back to live in their parents' basement. Nobody wants to do that. So if we create environments that look like the college town they went to, where they can live in a community, where they can walk to different places, I think that's a start. I think that we have to basically not only encourage people to go to college, but people to actually work in some of the trades. I think Suffolk Community College has put together programs on the manufacturing side. Every manufacturer is looking to hire people today, and they can't find qualified workers. And that's a failure on our side to create that. College isn't for everybody. And so
100% agree.
And I think that we need to have our secondary schools begin to promote programs like that. I think the Suffolks of the world, the Nassau Community College world, they can put programs in place to find workers for the manufacturing that is occurring. There is manufacturing occurring here. It is not, and it's, we're involved in the HIA. There's lots of things being built there.
Absolutely.
There's lots of things being distributed out of there that takes logistics. And manufacturing today it's using that computer. So much of it is computer assisted and computer design. And you watch the factory floor today, it's an interesting place. And so I think there has to be a vision to create a total economy. As you said, you can't have all municipal workers. You have to have private sector. And so we have to have a different approach to it. But it is about housing. It's about job training. It's about the things that we know we have a shortage of today.
You know what is interesting is food preparation is manufacturing.
Oh, it is.
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that until just recently. And if you're like me, I drive around these industrial areas and I say, why aren't they a client? Why aren't they a client? Why aren't they a client? I just try and go in and walk around.
Do it.
You know, and try and see what's going on. So one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. What's next? Right? What's the next 3-year plan on your brain? Where do you see the growth coming from? Do you see expansion? What do you see as sort of the next logical step for your organization?
I think we started this thing. It's sort of grow or die, right? So I think it's continued growth. You know, part of our, we've got this long-term franchise that existed for 100 years on the East End, and quite honestly, we're only 2 years in Nassau County. So you can kind of see where there's opportunity for us to grow. Market share, we're still negligible in many places, and we continue to do that. The opportunities that were created through bank mergers and acquisitions that fueled us for the last 10 years, other ones have just occurred that continue to allow that to happen. So I'm excited that the success we have will create additional success by people want to be part. People want to be part of a winning team. You have it. I feel like we have it.
Absolutely.
And so if we continue to leverage that and do the kind of things we're doing, which is to say this is a place where, from a banker standpoint, if you're a good banker, you want to be able to protect your customer. You want to be able to bring them to some place that they can grow. And so I think we provide that opportunity for them. So I'm excited about what we can do.
Bullish. You're bullish.
Bullish.
Yeah, 100%.
I've been using excited too much. I'm going to switch to bullish.
Yeah, you're bullish, and I appreciate that because I'm incredibly bullish. We're going through our 10-year plan, which we're chopping up into 3-year plans, and we're very optimistic and bullish. So, folks, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank our guest and my good friend Kevin O'Connor. Truly one of the most remarkable organizations here on Long Island, and he truly is one of the greatest leaders that I've encountered. A personal mentor of mine. I look up to Kevin and his organization, and I want to thank him for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Passion. Where can it take your business? From big dreams to the big time. From building bottom lines to building relationships. From Bridgehampton to Broadway, BNB is passionate about your business and its success. One of New York's fastest growing community banks, Bridgehampton National Bank has helped build and grow businesses for more than 100 years. BNB. Many success stories, one bank.